Okay. I will call to order this regular monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees, our first meeting for 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. I think you're allowed to say Happy New Year to what? Like the 15th, then you're halfway through January.
It's the first meeting.
Always. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Say that, I think I might. Item to mention and possibly discuss here under my report. And right, if there's no other changes to the agenda, we'll move on to our consent agenda, which includes our abstract of claims and meeting minutes from December 9th. On this abstract, we have claims expenditures in the general fund totaling $386,271.41. The EMS billing abstract totaling $12,067.89. Water fund totaling $45,981.81. Sewer fund totaling $175,364.61. That includes one of the bond payments in there. And trust and agency totaling $38,384 even. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Comments, questions, or needs to remove anything? Hearing none, then all in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That brings us to our first public comment period. Privilege of the floor. Yes, sir.
Okay, Peter Cook, 15 Cayuga Street. I just want to talk about Union Street, which I'm sure many of you realize there's issues there with parking. And I've talked to the powers that be, and apparently you guys are really the powers that be to make a decision on where to put the no parking signs, because we need them. I've been, up and down that intersection for 46 years, and it was always 2 cars. Now, it's during the day when the trucks are there, it's 1 car who goes first. And, that's bad, but it's worse because coming down Congress Street, you could be going 25 miles an hour and go around that corner. And somebody could be coming up Union Street at 10 miles an hour. Now, I think it's fortunate right now that the locals know this. But come, tourist season, it's not going to work. So I believe that parking signs have to be put up. No parking signs, I mean. And, that's up to you where they go. My suggestion would be at the back of the 2 buildings on either side. And from there on out to Cayuga Street, there on out to Congress Street, no parking. And, I bring it up in a public meeting just because I think it needs action. I'm sure you've talked about this before, and I would just hate to have something happen. And, I've stated this in public. I don't know if there might be liability issues. If you don't act on it, that's up to you guys. But something has to happen. I've been up and down that road. I estimate over 15,000 times. And it's fine. We always look. Everybody looks who's around, but it's not. Something's going to happen sooner or later. So it's up to, Dusty and Tom and whoever to make those measurements and see what's amenable to the 2 cars passing. Like that. That's all I gotta say.
Thanks, Peter.
Now you know if you didn't.
So we have no parking on the conservatory side.
Correct. Joe had, Officer Chief Nelson had temporary no parking signs put up on that new section of sidewalk that we did 2 years ago. Somebody had gone through and taken them down, tossed them down. I believe Joe was getting put back up.
So they're not back up yet?
And the change on the other side being that they used to be all open to the parking lot, and now they put in a sidewalk with a curb. I think people think they can just park there along the curb now, which really bottlenecks it as you get up to the intersection of Union and Congress.
Try it sometime about lunchtime.
And haven't they bumped that out a little bit with like curbing and sidewalk and trees? Cause it used to be able to pull right up to that sidewalk when Nampa was there. And I don't think you can anymore, right, Peter?
Now that the sidewalk and the curb are solidified in there, you can park along there.
Right, you can't pull in like you used to be able
Yeah.
to years ago. Yeah.
There's a drive there. Yeah, pull in,
Mhm.
but it's very tight. The further up toward you in Congress you go, the tighter it gets.
Yeah, I don't think that's been looked at closely since that sidewalk's gone in the Napa side, so we'll have Chief and Tom take a look.
Well, I think Tom did send something,
That was on the conservatory side.
it was on both sides. As soon as the sidewalk was done, he said there should only be on the conservatory side, handicap, and I think there's only room for 2 parking spots and then, or 1 parking spot. I'll have to go back and look at the email and then I can send that to everybody.
Folk, but further up by
But-
conservatory, so.
No parking by the conservatory at all, and then no parking where the new sidewalk is.
Is that part of the sketch? I was only looking. I thought it only referenced the conservatory side.
So there's only 1 parking spot before the fire hydrant and 1 parking spot after the fire hydrant, something like that.
Closer to that, closer to Main Street.
Yes.
The vehicle and driveway law does talk about Union Street and parking, but reading the words, it would take me a minute with a map to figure out exactly what they're talking about, but it might be worth making sure we're in keeping with what the law is there that we put down.
Obviously, the wrong time here, but, some moving forward in the spring, we'll come to a determination. We paint the couple spots that are there to help.
Yeah.
This is where the parking spots are, there's only like 4 of them, everything else is not.
Yeah, I hate to take parking away from the village, because I know it's precious. On one.
Everything on that Napa side was never.
Yeah, there was never any parking when that parking lot behind Napa was kind of just open. You wouldn't have been parking there anyway, so we're not losing anything there. Okay, well, thanks, Peter.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else?
Okay.
All right, move right along to reports from representatives. Ann is with us online.
Hello and happy new year to everybody.
Happy New Year.
Just a couple of things today due to the magic of vacations and quite a bit of time between some of our meetings. We had our first meeting of the year last week at the legislature, and we voted in Dan Klein again for a second term as chair of the legislature, and legislator Greg Mezzi as vice chair. This last week, we also welcomed our new county administrator, Corsa Akumfi. So Corsa is just settling in, and just put a bug in his ear. I want to see if I can show him around the village and the rest of the district. So I'll try and have him come your way so you folks can meet him. And really, the only last thing I had was I saw something in your agenda. I think it was the minutes from last meeting about something for Village Grove. If you guys are having anything, if you're doing anything, any welcoming or anything, just if I could be of any assistance or be involved in that. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but just want to make sure I can do all I can to welcome the folks there. And that's all I have right now.
Any comments or questions for him? Thanks, Ann, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, reports from this board, starting with myself. We have in the Dropbox in today's meeting folder for the Health Consortium, we have our annual municipal cooperative agreement, which does need to be ratified. We did this a couple of months ago for 2024 in arrears, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, due to some changes that were made. This one is for 2025. And happy to answer any questions anyone has about the Health Consortium. As you know, we've been a member since its founding. 2011 was the first year of its operation. The last time I did any kind of back of the napkin math, the original 13 Tompkins County municipalities that joined the consortium have saved collectively something like $17 million in the last 13 years as a result of this effort, and it's still the only one of its kind in the state. So we're quite pleased, even though costs do continue to go up every year. And so again, I am happy to answer any questions that anyone has, but I would entertain a motion to approve the 2025 municipal cooperative agreement for the Greater Tompkins County Municipal Health Insurance Consortium. So moved. Second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have that was a blast from the past. We have a engagement letter. We have had a standing engagement with Pinsky Law Group since 2010 or 11. Have very rarely needed his services. So he must be either cleaning up his books or otherwise. So we received an engagement letter essentially to keep him on. It's not a retainer because we're not paying anything up front, but keep him in our Rolodex or keep us in his books, whichever way we want to think of it. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at the engagement letter. My recommendation would be option 3, which is the most expensive hourly rate, but you all saw the email earlier. We've only used his services twice in the last 6 years, and for very short periods of time, usually a quick consult about something fire or EMS related. For those who are not aware, Brad Pinsky, the village engaged 15 years ago now when we first went to billing for ambulance services. He was our legal consultant as to the best way to go about setting the department up to do that. And we've used him a couple of times in the time since, again, for anything specific to fire or EMS law. Brad has been and continues to be widely considered to be New York State's preeminent expert on all things fire and ambulance law. So we try to keep him on our side. So I would, again, comments, questions, please. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to authorize me to sign this engagement letter with Pinsky Law Group for 2025 using option number 3 as our chosen billing rate. So
Second.
comments, questions?
Just to note, to reiterate mostly what you said in email, that we don't use him often, but when we do, it is, emergency.
We really
Things
need
are
it.
on fire. It's very important that he's there. I mean, he has really been very helpful when we have needed him, which is really the ideal relationship with the attorney, honestly, but yes, very much in favor.
Yes, just for the record, in 2018. We had $345 worth of billables from Brad Pinsky, and in 2023, we had $174. I think that was a 15-minute phone call, but such is the nature of it.
There's also a couple calls in there that aren't billable. I mean, I've reached out to him a number of times.
It's true.
So it's not, I mean, I see the 6-minute increment thing in there, but I think maybe if you're intriguing enough, he doesn't, he'll ponder it on his own time or something. He's certainly not mean-spirited with the billing. I think very fair.
Maybe this is part of his effort to clean that up.
Maybe that's true.
Maybe he's realized he's left. There's some revenue.
6 minutes on the table.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, then all in favor of approving signing this letter of engagement with Pinsky Law Group, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, one item that's not on the agenda that I wanted to add, I have had a request. I think this might be the first request I've had. Maybe in my entire time as mayor, but I've had a specific request for assistance and reimbursement for a constructed sidewalk. Where a village resident took it upon themselves to improve the sidewalk, ADA compliant, the whole nine. And I recall that we used to have a very small, $500 reimbursement kind of thing. No one's really ever, again, I don't know that we have the community builds that we do when possible. In terms of kind of a fairly, not formal in the legal sense, but formal in the, here's what we did, here's how much it costs. Can the village assist with some reimbursement? We don't get those often. Because it's not often that people hire a contractor to pour sidewalk. So I wanted to have a conversation about either do we revisit the policy as to how we handle this? Or do we take which is always tricky, but do we take any requests we receive, which again aren't many, on a case-by-case basis? And we do have some money left in a sidewalk reserve that we kind of squirreled away, partially for this purpose and partially for our own maintenance ongoing sidewalk repair that we will want to affect, particularly within the sidewalk corridor. My initial inclination is to not do nothing about this request. But I also I do want to set some type of a helpful precedent that isn't arbitrary. Dollar amount cap. I don't think $500 goes very far when it comes to sidewalk anymore. If it's, pick a number, 1,000, 2,000, 2,500, as funds may be available, those kinds of things. Again, I don't anticipate people hiring contractors for a sidewalk in front of their house when reimbursement is not given, and reimbursement, if it is given, is a small percentage of what they pay. But for those rare circumstances where people do it anyway, as long as it meets, again, if we're thinking about being precedence setting, they would have to be ADA compliant sidewalks, they would have to be within the village right of way. There would need to be some litmus tests to qualify for reimbursement of some amount. And so I wanted to throw that open. Again, triggered by a very specific request from the village president.
I have like 55 different thoughts. One is, I think if we go forward with this, we'll almost certainly have at least one other person reach out just for our own to consider that. Like, I think I know I've fielded a couple of questions in the past from people wondering about this, and I was under the impression that we don't have a policy. That's why we're talking about it tonight. So if we come up with a policy, I think we'll have at least one other person come forward. That's still not a lot of people, but just something to keep in mind. I'm inclined to like just have this somewhat based on where in the village. I think just a sidewalk in the middle of nowhere isn't very useful to the village. I think a sidewalk in an area where maybe we've decided we would like to have more sidewalk or more coverage or something like that. I think that plays into it. And then otherwise, when I've thought about this in the past, I feel like I thought about it somewhat like the tree program. And so if there's anything, and Ben, you probably know the details more than I am, like how that's modeled, and maybe we model something somewhat similar around it for that. But in general, I'm in favor of us trying to incentivize and encourage people to manage their sidewalks, because it's a way to get more in the village that isn't entirely on tax dollars from the residents, where people are willing and able interested to do that. So I think those are my thoughts off the top of my head.
That's where my head goes as well. The question of one, incentivizing future, right? Like, is this or isn't this something that we want to happen? Is the first question. If it's something that we want to happen and something where we would consider this, then it's probably something we want to incentivize in the future. But I think the tree model is kind of spot on, right? Like, if we rank and sort of prioritize what we care about, and then provide a financial incentive based on that ranking proactively. And that can be a way to drive this into the future. I think the tree model is also a good example of how this kind of an effort can dissipate and the momentum can disappear, right? We haven't had any applications for the tree thing. Well, we had one this year, but for the last two years ago, we had none. So it requires someone in the driver's seat proactively saying, hey, we want this. Or else we get sort of hit and miss, especially with sidewalk, right? It's not very helpful to have 10 feet of sidewalk nowhere. But I think the tree model is very good. I would be happy to talk more about what that looks like and how that works. But I think that's the way to think about it, at least from my perspective. I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I think if one of our goals is to have a walkable village and have things as easy as possible for people, and it can negate some of our expense in putting in the sidewalks, and can be helpful to a resident, in a small way, that certainly would be. To me, that's logical, and I agree with Roy that if they hire a contractor to do it and it's ADA compliant and it's all these things that we would have to follow if we were to put sidewalks in. It also mitigates some of our liability, like you just can't have Joe Schmo going out and pouring concrete and some wooden forms. It literally has to be, a stable. Yeah, I think encouraging that would be a good idea, even if it was if it was a small, whatever amount we decide, but
Right.
I think encouraging that would be a good idea.
I agree with everybody. My first thought was making sure that if somebody does decide to pour concrete, it is somewhere where it will be used and it is helpful, and not in an area where nobody walks either. Which could be, I don't know. People that would like a sidewalk, it might, I don't know, it might stir something up for somebody that would like a sidewalk, but we have no plans of putting a sidewalk in. I don't know, but I would definitely like to have a policy on that. We definitely have a lot of sidewalks that need to be repaired, and we're not gonna get some of, like, I'm not gonna give examples because then those people are gonna come in and be like, I want my reimbursement. But there are plenty of examples where there are sidewalks that are deteriorating, that need to be repaired, and I know it's not gonna be done.
I know.
I mean, one easy, I think one, let's have to think through this a little bit more, but I think one solution that think will be relatively straightforward is to be out, I mean, people, if it's on their property, people can put in a slab, like put in a sidewalk from one end of their property to the other. It's not like stop them, but in order to be eligible for reimbursement, the sidewalk must connect to existing village sidewalk.
Right,
So
that
if
sounds,
Marcia wants to put in a piece, sidewalk from her house to the golf course.
I would just like a golf course, a cart path.
You have the golf cart path, you and Chris and Jared will love it,
Yes,
but it's not gonna be eligible for reimbursement.
right, because it doesn't go to anywhere.
Right.
But if, pick on an intersection somewhere, if someone does put in a sidewalk that connects to village sidewalk on Main Street, then I think that might be an easy way to get around the kind of, that in addition to the specs of the sidewalk, it would be ADA compliant. Get it, depth and concrete, those kinds of things, but at least width wise.
I mean, there's also a piece here.
Village right of way. And within village right of way, Main Street wouldn't count because that's state DOT. We could probably include it, although we maintain the sidewalks on Main Street, so there's some thinking.
That's where I was going,
Right.
was the maintenance piece, right? So like, trees were a little bit tricky because it was always, we went out proactively and did an inventory of dangerous trees and then reached out in a proactive way. So we could do that model as well. But the difference with trees is that that is the maintenance. So if you put in sidewalk, I think you run into, we do Main Street, we do, right, South Street, we do all of those, but we don't do the privately held sidewalks. Right, like the new community built by the conservatory, we don't do that area,
Right,
right? So those are outside. So if we were gonna support it financially, I think one of the pieces I would want to see is a maintenance agreement of some kind that like
you will maintain your own sidewalk.
Well, I think
which
that-
is built into our laws already,
Right.
like sort of
I
a
was gonna say,
reaffirmation
yeah.
of
Yeah.
that.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's.
You're
still
just saying,
follows,
because we have
correct.
contributed this doesn't obligate us to come shovel your sidewalk, right?
Right.
But I think there's a lot of sort of access that we could think about making that plan.
Yeah, I think if we came up with a good plan on how that's executed, I don't see why we couldn't do something like that. Did this particular individual just say, what can you do? Is there something available that would give me reimbursement? Or have they asked for a number, or if they just throwing it out there? The idea.
They asked for property tax thing. But we don't. have-
Oh,
have
we
the
don't.
ability- We wouldn't have the ability to do that.
Right.
Real property tax law doesn't. But yes, so effectively they've asked for financial. For their ability to recoup their spend
Mhm.
over time somehow. And I don't know if you're listening to this, I haven't slammed the door on the tax piece, but we just don't, we can't. The law doesn't allow for that. But we do have money in the sidewalk reserve, so that's where this thought process came, yeah, Clint.
I did just want to mention that over this past summer, we took it upon ourselves to repair maybe 5 to 6 sections of sidewalk that had heaved or completely deteriorated. The Main Street section that we plow, it was mostly for ourselves for snow removal because the plow kept catching on it, but it is something that we intend to keep doing annually. Is identifying these sections that have heaved or gotten uneven or hard to walk on, replace them in addition. So we have already started making efforts to repair sections.
I mean, to my mind, this repair is kind of a euphemism for replace, right? Like, we're really talking about the old slate sidewalks primarily, right? That's,
That's what I would
I
assume.
assume so.
that's not an unfair assumption. Those are certainly the worst, but I don't know, without a plan ranking priorities, it's hard to really know or project what those might be. So you start thinking about it in a more comprehensive way.
Yeah, we definitely don't want anybody to tear out a sidewalk just to put in a new sidewalk either. Like, But I think that would depend on what this reimbursement amount is too.
I'm all for a village contribution, but tax abatement, something like that. No, wouldn't we all like a tax abatement for contributing to?
Right. that was
Something
just
to
this per-
recoup
that was
our-
just this
yeah.
person's suggestion.
Yeah,
Not. Them, I'm sure being unfamiliar with. With the law.
Well, they're probably just trying to be gentle, right? They don't want to ask like,
Right.
you know. I think that's fair. So I'd be happy to ask the tree committee. If we could come up with a similar criteria for sidewalks. We were already starting to transition to planting trees. They might be primed, or we could go a different direction. That's more brainstorming than anything else, but I'd be happy to ask.
Well, I mean, we have the walkability study, which is now almost 20 years old. I mean, we know. Where we need walkable sidewalks, certainly. The grants we've applied for, and the places we've almost started to prioritize sections based on where we entertain doing community builds. We're working on, let me take the.
in bureaucracy.
Bob is down in committees for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Let me take a look at. Some language. With fear and trembling, run it by Guy. If that may just. Give us the language we need, if we were gonna consider something like this. Do we have a sense? Cause I wanna make sure we're not getting into gifting, that's the other piece of it too. There would have to be a public good. We
Right.
have to connect to existing sidewalk. It probably would have to connect to our sidewalk district. They're not gonna follow it. It may end up being very narrow.
The way the trees worked, it was fairly straightforward. Right? I mean, it was really is the public good is we're eliminating risk. I feel like the public good here is very similar. We're keeping people off the road and off of the very, very dangerous slate sidewalks that are everywhere.
There might be more leeway with sidewalks though, because it's in the right of way and because it's a traveled path, that there's. My understanding from reading some Nikon documents is like, it's actually more hours than the homeowners.
Right, which is why the tree program was always limited to the right of way. Right,
So that, yeah, there might be something where it's more like, we're not gifting, they're actually gifting to us, the relationship might be somewhat reversed, but Guy would obviously know best.
And the anticipation of putting it in, like I would want somebody to. Approach us and say, we are anticipating on replacing the sidewalk and hiring a contractor versus. Doing it and then, instead of the asking permission, ask for forgiveness afterwards sort of situation, just.
I actually love the asking forgiveness, if they get it wrong, we don't pay them.
Do we have in this work to decide to have a sense of a dollar amount?
I mean, the tree program was $5,000 a year, which was, I think, more than enough to act as a catalyst. Sidewalks are probably more in terms of cost per resident, but probably less in terms of residents per year, right? So I would expect a similar dollar.
You mean in the
figure toward-
coffer, 5,000?
That was our annual
Total?
budget allocation for the
Okay.
tree program.
And then how is that divvied up?
The way that I mean, I don't know how much, I could maybe write this out better without getting into the weeds, but essentially. We gave a certain percentage of the work done up to a cap, and each year the cap changed based on how many trees we had. Right, so we were trying to spread it, would target a certain number of trees each year. Then the allocation was only available if you brought the tree down all the way down and ground the stump so that it could be planted. Or if you met certain other criteria, like not all the trees had to come down.
A percentage up to cap.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So it looks like there's like a couple of villages in New York State that do this, that we might be able to look at. Village of Waverly is one. So maybe we can look at their model and kind of, instead of trying to redo it.
Okay. Okay, that all sounds good.
But that'll be a thing you're taking, or yeah, I don't know.
Fisher. Wait. Chadwick guy.
Oh, City of Portland also.
Any villages?
Waverly.
Waverly, the village of Waverly?
Yes.
Cities get to do all sorts of different things.
Yeah, yeah, that was my thought.
Okay. Okay, that's it for me, unless there are any other comments or questions on sidewalk.
I'll just say one last thing, which I hopefully I have this right, but one thing we have done for anyone who's listening about sidewalk is folks can reach out to DPW and we have a conversation about pulling old slate, because in my perspective, that is actually hazardous. And some people are, it's just overgrown, it's not doing anyone any good. Pulling it up is something that we can consider from like a safety measure from the village. So,
And it's hard to do, like on your own if you.
right,
Yeah.
so folks can reach out to Dusty or myself. We can have that conversation if people are interested in that.
Marcia, anything from fire?
I just have the yearly totals. Total calls were 385, but I noticed that 112 of them were false alarms. So I'm assuming that that might be apartment situations or something that we have where alarms might have gone off by cooking or something. We did 4 structure fires, 2 vehicle fires. We assisted EMS 46 times. We did 2 rescues, which I didn't get a chance to talk to Matt, but I'm assuming those were park rescues. 30 motor vehicle accidents, 2 extractions, 77 hazardous conditions. Those were from storms, things like that, debris that needed to be moved. 42 service calls, 17 good intent calls. I don't know what that means. Maybe just checks or something to that nature. 10 mutual aid. We had 7 mutual aid received. And that is the totals. They had 28 training hours, 47 drills, and 4 miscellaneous hours that they used for training and vehicle checks and things like that. That's it.
Excellent. EMS Youth and Street Trade Advisory Committee.
Start with EMS calls, 14 in the town of Covert, 4 in Benfield, 6 in Hector, 4 in the village of Interlaken, 10 city of Ithaca, 1 in the town of Ithaca, 1 in Mecklenburg, 1 in Newfield, 1 in Odessa, 1 in Ovid, 17 in the village of Trumansburg, 29 in Ulysses. We also transitioned to priority 1, first return of the new year. So far that has been going really just fine, kind of a less exciting than we thought it would be. And well, actually Joel was fairly confident from the beginning, I should say, less exciting than I thought it would be. There was been a couple hiccups along the way, some of the towns didn't get us the voided checks that we needed, so there will be some delay in getting their receivables to them. But by and large, quite smooth. Happy with the process thus far. One thing that I wanted to bring up. We had, oh yeah, okay, thanks Jess, it is on the agenda. So we had a couple of months ago adjusted EMS wages. One thing that we had neglected to do, and this is entirely my fault, so I apologize, but we had neglected to include the clerk role, the EMS clerk. So this evening I would like to move that we increase that pay rate by $3 an hour to bring it up in line with the other raises that we had done. And then also to apply that retroactively to our current EMS clerk.
Can I ask a point of clarification on
Yeah.
that? So my understanding was that from Joel, but I didn't get a corrected sheet to present to the board, that the intention was you would get $3 above what you were already getting if you accepted the clerk role, that it wasn't a prevailing wage change, but maybe you understand differently.
Prevailing, I'm not sure I follow.
So part of where we noticed this was then putting in the rate for the rate that was adopted by this board was the prevailing wage, which was what was posted in the civil service, which was a value. And then what came back was, no, that person was already making that value. They were supposed to get a $3 an hour increase
Right.
now that they had become the clerk. Which
So
made me think, oh, so if you are already doing this job at this job at a level, but then took on the clerk role, you were supposed to get an additional $3 an hour. That is not like a flat rate.
I don't believe that's the case. No, this has a
This
separate.
individual is
rate.
definitely about to get a different raise than was posted for the position or than the prior person held. Which is why there hadn't been a rate.
Oh, this is the
change.
level of, I wasn't aware of this, so. Maybe this is something that we should collect our wits together in executive session and go through the details of this and then come.
I
back.
don't have any documentation for, I just have a verbal conversation. I never got a.
I can try and review it. I don't want to leave it past tonight, but I also
Okay.
don't want to talk about the details
Yeah,
and
let's do this
particulars
in a
of
second.
someone's employment. So
Yeah.
let's
okay.
talk in executive session. We can revisit this. So I will not make that motion. I don't have much to report as far as tree committee or youth. One thing I did want to know is we got a presentation this month at the Youth Commission on it's called the Clyde Survey. And it's basically the well-being of area youth. Joanna, you probably saw this on the school board. would
Yes,
assume.
they do it every year.
Yeah. And I didn't bring any of the details of that survey, but I did want to offer if anyone wants to see it or if anyone would like to see a presentation. It is a very, I think, eye-opening and interesting survey. Like you can attest to this, I assume.
Yeah, so if you want somebody to actually have it explained to you, it's really easy to go back to the school board meeting, because they always have a presenter
Right.
at the school board meeting. But if you want to see the results, it's really easy to find them.
Well, and we could also have someone come here and present it, right, in case we
Yeah.
have questions. We could do, this is a both and situation as well, right? I could send it out. But I thought I would see if this board or the community at large, I don't know, if people are interested in seeing it. It is a very interesting survey in terms of the well-being of our youth, how we're doing. To me, that's a very salient measure of how we're doing as a community. So it's interesting in that regard. For those of us that are parents, I think it's doubly interesting because it's sort of, there's an embedded critique in your performance as a parent and as a community. Or maybe not a critique, right?
So
me-
the
for me, it
Clyde
landed as a
survey,
critique, but-
just for people that don't know, it does go through drug use, alcohol use, mental health of students. And that starts from, I think, middle school all the way through high school. They survey.
It's middle and high school. And I will say that the last time I think I mentioned it to this board, at that point, it was just. Maybe not exclusively, but it was primarily focused on drug use within the youth, the community. It was really like, we called it sort of tongue in cheek, the drug survey. And it really is less that now. There's a lot more mental health and wellness. That frankly was, I think, more interesting and more actionable. But really just a note, if anyone wants that information or is interested, reach out. It's easy to share. There's a pretty comprehensive slideshow.
Tompkins Weekly covered it in November too, so.
Yes.
If anyone else is listening, there's a link to the school board presentation and some more details about the survey as well.
Oh, nice.
Yep, I'm not sure I agree that their priorities in reporting it were the same as my priorities in hearing it, so it's
That is
I think it's
good,
worth
yes.
looking into beyond that article.
Yeah, the headline was about substance use, so.
Right, and the headline's not wrong,
Yeah.
but maybe the priority sets are individual.
Yeah, I remember the conversation, I think, of the school board was much more the mental health angle, which I think was interesting.
Which again, I think is the much more relevant and interesting takeaway. The drug uses feels difficult, and it's difficult to do more than the school district is already doing in terms of educating about what's appropriate and what drug use is and how that becomes abusive. I know the school focuses a lot on trying to educate youth about there's a perception that drug use is very prevalent among youth in our country and in our community, and the reality is that that's not at all the case. So our school does a lot of educating about this is almost no one does this is very rare, and beyond that and the other initiatives that they have, it's kind of hard to do more, right? I think it's one of those beating a dead horse situations where it's like, yes, drugs are bad.
Social media is worse, and I think it's causing a lot of these problems.
Right. So we did at the Youth Commission have a fairly robust conversation about how to tailor and sort of tweak the survey moving forward. The local youth development departments or councils, I actually forget what jurisdiction this was isolated to, but are allowed to put in 10 questions of their own within this survey. So one of the things that we were recommending was that it incorporated social media more at the sort of intersection of wellness and digital media, like how those two things interact. We'll see how they, it's ultimately not our conversation, but I agree. That was sort of where my mind went immediately. We'll see. No need to belabor it, but just feel free to reach out if you want to see the report.
The EMS stats, is that in a document? Or did you just have it in notes?
That is a report that I pulled directly from EMS Charts, which is the charting software, but I would be happy to share it in whatever form.
What was the date, time, what was the
So that's December's calls. Sorry.
calendar December?
Yep.
Can you go back through those slowly, or do you have a total number?
Total is 90.
And you had City of Ithaca, you had one in the town of Ithaca,
Yes.
how many in Enfield?
Field 4.
You had 10 in the city, right?
10 in the city, which is abnormal.
Ridiculous.
Well, ridiculous and abnormal,
Right.
right? I think last month was 1. I would have to double check to be sure, but that is a real spike.
So 15 out of district. Anything on the other side of Ithaca? Maybe Lansing, Dryden, Groton, nothing crazy out there.
No, we didn't go that far. I mean, the city is
Nothing Slater, Millbrook, and LA. So it's 15, what's 15? 2, 6, is that 1/6? 15 in the 90s, 1/6, yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Do they give a breakdown on what the calls specifically were for? I'm sure we can find that out, right?
So I did not just give that breakdown, and I don't usually.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to drill down further, I can look things up, or Joel can look things up.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a way to share that information without violating HIPAA right now.
Right.
So it's like, we've talked about this as well with police, where it's sort of, do we want to share a dashboard? How do we protect ourselves and the confidentiality of our, of patients?
When it's one
and
call,
share that out, right?
Exactly.
Right,
So
gotcha.
it's kind of delicate.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right, so we don't have a way to scrub that information and share it
Oh,
publicly
gotcha.
without it being completely inappropriate at this point.
Okay, I just wondered if those things were scrubbed and maybe you could break it down by what type of. That's what.
I mean, we certainly could. It would require building that infrastructure so we could do it.
Yeah.
So if there was a lot of interest or some sort of acute need, we would certainly do that. But at this point, it's not something.
Yeah, okay.
I know the Dryden ambulance is, I think, close to 50% out of district. In the last couple of months, their calls, so it's surprising we're trending up as well.
Well, 90, I mean, 90 is pretty close to our normal. And, you know, monthly rate, right, sort of hover between 80 and 90.
But almost 20% of those calls are district, that's the.
that's the Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, you know, our village calls are abnormally low this month. Right, so I mean, I think. If there's ever a lesson in the EMS industry, it really is a dynamic of surge and then drought, right? And that plays out system-wide, it plays out regionally, it plays out in municipalities, it plays
Full
out.
moon, not a full moon.
Right, it plays out block by block, however you break it down. It really. Yeah, it's just surge and drought. But that's it for my report, unless anyone has questions.
Any questions for Ben? Okay.
The vacant seat for the youth.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't have that on my list, but that is a very good point. So our youth commission has, I am obviously the village youth commissioner, I guess is my title, although that's very misleading because there is an actual youth commissioner and that is not me. I am our village board liaison to the youth commission, maybe is the better terminology. We also have an at-large representative, so a community member who represents the village as a community more generally, not necessarily the board and village government, but the community of the village on that commission. That seat is or will be vacant. I would hope to fill it by our organizational meeting in April. But if anyone is interested in joining, please reach out. It is in general, I think a very impactful group, right? We not only review things, information like the Clyde survey that I was just mentioning. We also have a strong oversight and advisement function for youth program managers that go and operate programs within the youth, within the middle and high school. We oversee and advise sports camps, recreation throughout the town and the school district. So it really is a wide ranging and I think fun group, frankly. And there is, you know, unlike, you know, no offense, but CPZR type committees, right, where the workload is infinite. The workload for the youth commission really truly is once a month meetings. There's certainly an awareness. I think that's yeah, yeah, no, he definitely did. I think that was on the new side. So this is a really great way, I think, both to be impactful to your community and to get a taste of what being involved in government is. This is a group that has representatives from the town, from the village, and from the school. So you get a lot of different sort of slices and perspectives on how government runs, how youth in the community are doing, what we can do, and then also you have levers and access to ways that allow you to make a really positive impact within the community, particularly in youth. Although I will say that over the last couple of years, we're also getting more into adult recreation and sort of spreading our wings a little bit on that front. But thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
So again, just to reiterate, please reach out to me if anyone is interested. Maybe we'll see this recording someday.
I wonder if that's the kind of thing we could Jess could put in the weekly email.
I'm
potentially.
actually just penning the typing.
Look at that. Already had it.
Great minds.
Okay. DPW water sewer, speaking of CPZR.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to update, so I'll actually keep it pretty brief. The one point of business there is that our contractor for the wastewater treatment plant, Camden Group, is looking to buy 40 cloth socks to replace at the plant. That is for a price of $12,103.75, which requires us to review it from the board and give approval. This is one of those things where it comes from the one company that makes the equipment that it fits onto. And so unfortunately, we don't have competitive quotes. Camden's been pretty good at trying to find third-party vendors for some of these things where possible, but hasn't been able to make that work here. So with that, I would make a motion to approve the quote for cloth socks for the wastewater treatment plant for the amount of $12,000, $12,103.75.
So moved.
Second.
I think I moved it.
Oh, sorry, motion.
Second, any questions? Comments?
I thought you were going when you said socks, but
I know,
those are
yeah,
expensive socks.
they're very expensive socks.
It's just gonna be from sewer contractual.
Yes, yes.
Comments or questions? None? Favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think I'll keep it at that in the interest of keeping us moving.
Okay, please join it.
Don't have a lot. So chief's report is. For the month of December, we had 328 calls. Two to assist Tompkins County Sheriff. One was a mental health assist, one was an injured deer animal. And then, let's see. 159 property checks. 42 traffic tickets. 16 parking complaints. 10 EMS assists. 6 welfare checks. They did assist Winterfest. They closed down the street for us and helped us enjoy our time. And then other than that, let's see, I think I had one thing to mention about traffic tickets. So in order to pay your traffic ticket, you do not come into the police station and pay that. You actually go into the town office, is my understanding. So it's one less step that we have to do. Because we end up having to take it to the town office anyways. So folks need to pay their tickets in the town office.
I can make a post of that too.
Thank you.
I want to
And
just clarify before you post anything about it, just check with chief on what types of tickets. Some actually, most tickets are going to be appearance tickets for town court.
Okay.
you're right, all tickets go to county. All tickets go to county, that's what I have written down, not town.
I'll confirm any language.
They're
with them
adjudicating
before
time. I think the parking tickets though, I think.
Yeah, I'll confirm the language before I post it.
Thank you. And that's it.
Okay. Clerk, treasurer Jessica.
Okay, so 1099s went out, W2s went out, so end of the year reporting for the calendar year is completed. Thinking about the next cycle, I've met with the police chief and I've met with the DPW. So they should be ready to meet with commissioners for their budget sessions if you haven't already. I may owe each of them a couple lines of definitive about workers' comp, so moving along with that. Gordon, do you want me to set up doodle polls for budget sessions based on,
Yes,
okay? And so I did discuss with Tompkins Trust positive pay fraud protection for our checking accounts. And I don't know if perhaps I should go over the details of that with you and then we'll see how to move forward with that. I am also exploring with our CPA, perhaps consolidating how many checking accounts we have, what could be done with trust and agency, which was eliminated by the comptroller. Just to not have to pay on 5 checking accounts if possible. I'll certainly share that information if I have a suggestion in that direction. Also general code, moving along with that, the The next phase is essentially to approve the general format of how they want the code to look. Based on how they've done it in terms of the literal book, like, do you approve that the table of contents will look thusly? Do you approve that we will name things thusly? And it's pretty detailed and dense. It seems also very rote, but a big thing, and I don't know if that's something the board wants to look at before we adopt and sign off. If I should just email that and you can digest it, we bring it up at the next meeting, or you can comment online if you have any changes.
Just email first.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty standard, but it seemed like too big a decision for me to say, yes, it should always look like this forever. So that's good. And it's a lot to digest, but once we approve it, that's really the next step. Then they plug in the laws that we have and we have a document. So I am looking to, speaking of updates and things plugging in, you may recall that when we moved over with HPM Tech Services, when we needed to replace Jeff Burns, they did a whole analysis of what we have for hardware, what we have for software, and they actually had a complex, not so complex, they had a series of phases of what we would need to update. First, you could do email, then we'll migrate to Microsoft 365 for software. Okay, here's what you need to do now immediately for your tech system. There was also a phase 2 that they suggested, and the document for that is in Dropbox with a quote. So this information came to us in June. We'd already adopted a budget, so it didn't get put into this year's budget, but the hardware itself pertains to not only the functionality of our routers and servers here in the village office, but also the security of them. And so there's a quote in there for $6,435.89, which you can see is something that was already part of a phased approach. It's not exactly a new concept. But I'm asking of this board if you would consider that we had allocated in the clerk treasurer contractual line money for a bookkeeper that we did not end up using. So that there's something like $16,000 left in that contractual line. And I don't know, Gordon, what other words have to be said if we're asking for a budget modification. It's a similar sort of concept. It's not a human being making the business office function, but it's hardware.
No, what we would need to do is we would need to approve the spending for this quote out of the IT line.
And then
You would close this budget year.
we move it. Okay, okay,
Justin, have you talked to them lately?
yes.
Like, they don't mind the 2-year-old estimate?
No, this is a fresh, this is it. It was good. Yep, you resent it to me 2 weeks ago.
It does have a date.
Yeah, it has a very old date.
I verified with him though,
Oh.
but
No, that's fine.
if he comes back with something otherwise, I guess I need to come back to you and say, it turns out he sent me the wrong thing.
I mean, I love that works. That's,
Yeah.
The phases from that June 2023 quote were meant to be over 3 to 4 years. So we're at phase 2.
plan some inflation in there already.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Don't see any reason why we wouldn't continue on this
Right.
phased IT improvement.
So does that need to be a motion? Okay,
I would entertain a motion to approve spending $6,435.89 for IT systems upgrades with HPM Tech Services.
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
that is it, although we will add that there is a winter market happening at the fire hall on Wednesdays. There's also a new business in town called Hooks and Shanks, where you can go on Main Street and be in a golf simulator. I asked them if they wanted to have a ribbon cutting, reaching out from the ETC. So they wanted to have a ribbon cutting or a press release. They said, gosh, it's one room, maybe not a ribbon cutting, but hopefully there'll be a press release. Anyone who's interested in what they can do in the winter with their love of golf in Trumansburg can check out Hooks and Shanks. You can Google it and it will pop.
The farmer's market is at the fire hall?
Correct. Oh, sorry, the VFW.
Oh,
Sorry, that
okay.
was last year. Thank you.
You mean the Legion?
Legion.
We'll get there.
Oh, yeah, the Legion.
One of those places.
Yeah, thank you. It's like, oh, they changed venue. No, I'm sorry. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
All right, item number 7 is old business. Looks like we have continued conversation about childcare at the state of the village.
Yeah, I just had put this back on here to see if there's been any, I think the last time you would have a takeaway to have a chatter about it. All right.
I can keep keep investigating. Don't have any good news, it's fine.
Yeah,
Were you investigating the liability of doing that or no, just the actual body that could do it?
Just question.
Oh, okay.
Could still happen.
that's fine. It's just.
I believe I could follow up on Thursday, that community meeting. Could they do? I'd be happy to look.
Speaking of state of the village, also anything else? Do we want to, since it is January? Do we want to talk about topics? Have we settle on topics? Do we want to do this via email? Like to have kind of bullet point. In addition to kind of a year in review and department comments.
I don't even remember what we did last year.
I'd have to look to-
Yeah,
Try to do as little slideware as possible.
Yeah,
yeah, I remember that.
and more public
More
question
It was
and
more of a discussion,
answer
and I-
sort of thing.
Yeah, I did like that format. I
Mhm.
remember in general, it was nicer to have a more open discussion based. Premise to the learning.
Well, let's think about it. We are 6 weeks, 7 weeks out. So
First of March.
first
Correct.
Saturday. So if we can think of if there are any kind of big headline updates, I imagine by then we will have more very official word on the future of the former Camp Barton. It's true. And of course, just kind of brief updates on where we stand with our 2 big grants, but if there's anything kind of headline-ish, let's start to plan that agenda. Solar energy.
Yes, so as we spoke last month, we talked about looking into opportunities to purchase solar energy at a benefit to the village. This is. I don't pretend to know exactly how all the money works and how this works generally, but there are enough support for solar where you can buy in and effectively get some percentage discount off of your bill by doing so. So I heard back from Power Management Corporation, I think that's their name, PMC. They have prepared 2 different agreements for us, which is in response to our kind of initial thoughts last time around, looking for 5-year terms and trying to get that 5 to 10% discount. They came back with 2 different agreements. If you remember last time around, we talked about the 2 different types of accounts. There's anchor accounts, which are the larger accounts, probably, I'm assuming it's our wastewater treatment plant, some of the water infrastructure that are, I think you said larger than 25. I don't know, I can't remember the number now. Was it kilowatts per month or megawatts per annual or whatever the threshold was that gets you into that bucket? And so one of the accounts is for those accounts, one of the contracts there. Those would be at a 5% discount for a 5-year term, and then there would be a renewal for an additional 5-year term if we wanted to at that point. And then the other one is for the mass market accounts, which are the smaller ones like the office and probably the fire department maybe or something like that. And that's a 5-year term and then a 2-year renewal after that, should we be interested. So those are both in the Dropbox. They are quite lengthy and long to the point where My suspicion is it'd be nice to have Guy take a look. The flip side there is that, my understanding is they're pretty pro forma, they're pretty standard. And I don't know that we need to waste a ton of Guy's time on it, but hopefully he could do like a kind of quick cursory look. To the extent that that's a thing Guy is capable of doing.
I just don't understand why everyone is laughing right now. That was.
Without spending too much money, offsetting the value.
Right.
Savings we're trying to pull in, but that was kind of my initial response, having looked at this. I also only got these today, so I haven't really had time to sit with them. So I guess basically the conversation here is, would we like to either just personally sit with these and review them and come back around next board meeting and talk about adoption and or get Guy's review in there? I guess I'm looking for a little bit of kind of guidance here. I did ask about timeline. There's no sort of like deadline or these expire at it, but it is kind of a first come, first serve. Like basically we are signing up to kind of get in line for the next project that opens up from these providers, or the next amount of capacity that opens up from these providers. So the sooner we sign, the sooner that opens up, the sooner we get in. But there's no real rush per se, as far as I could tell. So yeah, I think I'll pause there and see if people have thoughts and ideas.
That's sort of a derailing issue.
All right.
Which is lower down on the agenda, the letter from Mega, the letter of inclusion,
Yes.
which I think we should do first so we can get pricing from them and have something to compare.
So my understanding is these are kind of completely separate, actually.
So they kind of are. There's the two things that you can do, right? You can buy into community solar, or you can buy bulk. And you can also do, I believe there's a third way that I have trouble articulating because the nuance of it is like so like hair thin that it's very difficult for me to retain it in my mind, to be perfectly honest. But I believe there's three ways. I believe at least two of them are not mutually exclusive. But I think for myself, at least, I would like to get clarity on what those sort of lanes are and what the pricing is and if they can overlap. Because the contact of Mega, who we've worked with evidently for 20 years, which is hilarious because I did not know he existed, and we've both worked on this over the last few years, right?
Right, yeah.
Vicky didn't know he existed, so our previous treasurer had no idea. Which is a little bit mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
But we've essentially been coasting on a contract that we signed initially in 2001. You were right about that date. And so that exists. But we signed evidently with, was it PCM? What did you say?
Yeah, PMC.
PMC. A letter of exclusion that allows them to basically be our single source of pricing. And Mega, I believe Jess and I both got calls from Jim. And they would like to present their pricing at the same time, which to me feels only reasonable. Now the one sort of, that's where I would like to see Guy's eyes, is on those two agreements, the exclusion and inclusion agreements, to make sure that we can sign both of those in parallel.
So I did talk with PMC, and I didn't give them the full like actual language of the inclusion letter, but they had no problem with us signing that. And that was his expectation, was that was fine, that we can allow Constellation to give pricing to both Mega and PMC. It's a weird web as far as I can tell, but my understanding, Constellation is an energy provider. And they can give pricing to these different groups. And so what we're saying to the Constellation is you can give pricing to PMC and Mega, and that's fine. PMC is basically waiting on giving us pricing until they can get pricing for Constellation, who is not giving them pricing until we've decided what the heck we're doing. So we're all in this kind of like waiting game right now.
Very.
My understanding, at least on the PMC side, is that the solar and their pricing are completely disjoint. I imagine the same is true for Mega, but it's not. And either way, I'm not in a rush to sign the solar anyhow. So we can certainly think about them, maybe decide if we want Guy to take a look at it or not.
I mean, if they're okay with it, then I see no problem. Right? If it sounds fun to them. I think this is one of those weird industry standard things where they know exactly what this letter is and exactly what it means. And if they don't care and their feathers aren't ruffled, I don't think. that's a
They
concern.
don't, and I think. He's very much a sales guy, so I'm always trying to like parse, what are you doing here?
Well, to
But I
be
think,
clear, so is Jim.
yeah, right, but I got the sense. His position was, we'll compete on the dollars and cents, and so do whatever you guys want to do. We don't want to get in the way, which I thought was the right play to play. And so, yeah, I'm, when we get to that point, I would like us to sign the letter with Constellation, then that can get that part moving. But my fairly confident it's unrelated to the solar, even though it's all about energy. One does not preclude the other. Yeah, right.
Well, you're all right.
I'm all, yeah, all right.
Sign
I'm all right
that
to
letter and see what the pricing looks like and
Yeah.
see how they overlap.
Yep.
In that case, I would move that we authorize Roden to sign the letter of inclusion. From, I believe is it from Mega?
Yeah,
From Mega.
yeah.
This is-
Yeah, that was under new business.
Did I put that in as a letter? I don't know if I've seen a letter.
It is, it's.
Yeah,
it's
AII.
Awesome.
Yeah, Constellation Energy Mega.
We have a motion to authorize me to sign the letter of inclusion with Mega. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any other questions, comments, discussion?
So this allows Constellation to give pricing to both Mega and
And PMC.
PMC.
And they will be different. Jim was clear about that. And the reason, as I understand it, is because they're just different programs. What Mega does is it pulls together demand from all the different municipalities and they get a price because they've got a higher demand, whereas PMC farms it around to a whole bunch of different providers and you get different quotes and they give you the best quote. And so we will see where everyone plays out at the end of the day.
I think that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mega is more of a. You're almost trading. You know, the same way you would if you go to Chicago and trade. You know, any other commodity, right? You can buy sort of bulk pricing for years to come.
I do think if they're the same or close, I feel like we've had we've had a better conversation with PMC recently. They're more supportive and collaborative in what we're trying to get done. But then the numbers can speak for themselves if they're wildly different.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of authorizing me to sign this letter of inclusion for Mega, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So I guess the only question then is if we would like me to run the solar conversation by Guy or just completely pause on that until we get more information.
That sounds good.
Okay,
I'd be inclined to ask Terry first, honestly.
it's a really good idea, actually.
Um,
Why don't I do that?
any kind of pre-guy filter, I think is a good step. Just
Yeah,
we will lose that saving very quickly, and it is a very long agreement, and it is very in the weeds.
yeah,
The energy stuff is such a nuanced little niche thing that it's dense.
yeah. Thank you for reminding me of Terry. I did chat with him, I think after last month, and he had some insight. So I'll run these by Terry. We'll get more from hopefully PMC and Mega, and we can see where everything takes us. Feels like a good conclusion to my mind.
Okay, next item of old business, we have a very large packet of information regarding proposed infrastructure dedication from the 46 South Street project. I hope everyone on the board's had a chance to review it. It has been thoroughly and repeatedly, dare I say repetitively, reviewed by our engineering firm and council. Lynn, you and I may have to have a conversation about redundant billables here at some point on both sides.
So I'm actually just gonna jump in. I know that this is very contentious, so I'm gonna just step out of the room to avoid any appearances here. could you text me when you're done?
Sure.
Okay.
I want to emphasize that this is sort of abundance of caution.
Should it be?
Okay.
Should it be contentious, but
I mean,
You're welcome.
publicly, there has been a history of contention. about
oh, like
project
within
in
the last
general.
decade.
Yeah.
Right. For the last
Gotcha.
decade.
So again, abundance of caution. I'm sorry to cut you off, but send me a text. I'll be right outside.
Stay warm.
I'm gonna go into the office on the other side.
So for this board, we have, again, thoroughly reviewed, information. If you have any questions of Dusty or Clint, please feel free to ask them. If either of you have any input, other than what you've already given to MRB. What we have before us to consider this evening is a resolution of acceptance, which would accept dedication, essentially deeding over to the village, the road that is Crescent Way and associated water mains, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, for the subdivision, which would put it under the purview of village DPW. The resolution, which it's short, so I'll just read it, and then we can, if someone wants to move it and second it, then we can discuss it for as long as everyone wants. So this resolution reads as follows: whereas the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Trumansburg, hereinafter referred to as Village Board, is considering the acceptance of a dedicated roadway, Crescent Way, water main, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer for Village Grove, previously known as Crescent Way subdivision. And just made a change.
I'm just copying, I just opened it. Sorry, I didn't know that.
Previously known as Crescent Way subdivision, and whereas the roadway to be dedicated is Crescent Way, and whereas the Department of Public Works Superintendent and Village Engineer, MRB Group, have completed a final inspection of the infrastructure offered for dedication and no deficiencies were identified. And whereas the Department of Public Works Superintendent and Village Engineer recommends the Village Board accept dedication of the roadway and infrastructure. And whereas the village attorney has reviewed the documentation associated with the dedication and has approved the language documentation presented by MRB Group. Now therefore be it resolved that the village board does hereby authorize the village clerk to file any and all documents to cause to be accepted the dedication of the roadway, Crescent Way, water main, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer improvements within the Village Grove. Would someone like to move that?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
One clarification, I guess. There's additional sidewalk and lighting part of that. It's in the bill of sales, but it might help clarify the resolution.
We're not making any changes to this resolution tonight, unless you want to push off a month.
That's fine, though. I think it's clear enough. It's covered on other documents.
So this is the resolution as reviewed and approved by Guy and MRB. And again, if either of you two have any comments, please feel free. Otherwise, it's up to this board to ask questions, discuss, and or we can vote.
So this is just the roadway and the infrastructure. That's it, right?
Roads, right of way,
Right,
water mains, sewer
Okay, right.
mains, stormwater.
right.
So yes, that would include anything within the right of way, such as sidewalks.
Sidewalks.
And street lighting within the right of way.
Okay.
There are a number,
So you guys are gonna be responsible for maintaining the sidewalks? For salting and
No,
shoveling? No.
no, as far as maintenance of the sidewalk, if a section breaks or bad, needs to be replaced. It is not part of this, the Main Street corridor or the Safe Routes to School District, therefore sidewalk maintenance is not ours.
Okay,
it becomes like every other village
Village
sidewalk
sidewalk.
in
Okay.
the village right of way, it's property owner's responsibility.
okay,
It's not
so we're
part
not
of
bringing
our
on.
sidewalk district.
Okay,
There are a number of other portions of the project and the property that are yet to be dedicated in the future that are not part of this resolution.
okay. Got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
But this would mean effective when the documents get filed, they'll be plowing. will be patrolling.
And residents are there now, right?
Moved in.
Yeah. Do you know how many are moved in currently?
The townhouses are full, so that's 6, and I think there are 4 in the main building, so about 10 floors.
Oh, okay. And there are 44 apartments altogether? 46?
Other questions?
I'm sorry, that's the question. Jessica, you'll know that the 2 stubs that come out are actually called East Crescent Way and West Crescent Way. And then the road in the center is Crescent Way. I'm assuming that Crescent Way is encapsulating everything, because the other documents goes down and whatnot, but I just want to mention that to everybody, there's actually 3 road names in that.
Just don't change the name between now
Not changing anything.
and. Other comments or questions?
As of right now, this still doesn't.
This is not part of this. We will not be discussing that this evening. Any other comments,
Okay.
questions on this resolution before the board?
Is the streetlights are included in the right of way,
If they're within the right of way.
if they're within the right of way?
Yes.
Is that some? That this is not, I don't think that's a bearing on the conversation particularly, but I was just curious, do you guys have the capacity to maintain those, or, because I know the rest of it's all maintained through the NIPA contract?
I believe we put in I believe they were supposed to kind of try and match up, but I know they're not in our system
Right.
as of right now, so without going through the specs on what they are.
Might be something for us to follow up, is like, maybe there's a way to talk with NIPA about.
And then the electrical disconnects are also the right of way, not inside of a building.
You don't have to get with NIPA, see if we can add them. to the
Yes,
system.
even because they're not part of the initial build, but
Leads me to wasn't discussed in the DPW section, but that's a change.
yeah, that's in our new business. Yeah, Yeah.
But that's something with whoever that's moving forward, we discussed it on.
right.
Anything else from the board? Conversation, questions, or discussion? All in favor of approving this resolution as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you all. We get Ben back in here. Any other items of old business? Which makes us a new business, let's see, Conservatory. We have a resolution of support for them, we can wait on Ben, just give him a text. So we have a resolution in support of the conservatory's application for New York State Council of the Arts Capital Grant. We all saw the emails back and forth. They were looking for a letter of support, but resolution is always nice. And the deadline for this is,
I think it's tomorrow.
and do we want to do both the letter and this?
I guess I hadn't considered both. I was thinking we do the resolution.
That seemed to satisfy Ezra when I responded again to him.
Oh,
today.
wonderful. Great, thank you.
Resolutions are
Yeah.
more formal. So I'm not gonna read the whole thing. We all know and appreciate the conservatory's role and presence in the village for over 40 years. Continue to grow and as part of their overall revitalization. We would simply be saying that we, the Board of Trustees, expresses our strong support for their application to the New York State Council on the Arts Capital Grant Program for Phase 2 of their renovation. And I think we just said the deadline is tomorrow, so would someone like to move this?
Yes.
I'll
I-
second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments, questions?
Strong.
Yes.
Comments or questions? All in favor of approving this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Jess, you'll get this to Ezra tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Which takes us to the previously mentioned street light vendor for control of the various village
Yes.
lights.
Yeah, so as Dusty kind of hinted, we have all these lovely new streetlights. NIPA ran the program for getting them installed and working through all the pieces there. And we did the work for, there's a control system on top of it that lets us do things like reduce the intensity, change when they go on and off, those sorts of things. Also notice when things, when a light bulb's going out, those sort of stuff. Unfortunately, the company that runs that control layer is apparently dissolving, going away. I didn't quite get any of the details. But this means that we are in a position to make a decision how we want to respond to that. Which is rather frustrating and aggravating because we've just recently put all these in and then here we are already needing to replace or do something else about it. So NIPA sent out an email. I followed up with them. They gave us 4 options and I followed up with them and asked for specific quotes for exactly our system related to the 4 different options. So one option is we don't do anything. We just stay on the current system. But as things break and whatever all else happens, we just kind of slowly lose control of the system. One option is to wholesale replace the whole system right now, for which NIPA is giving a discount on both on their labor and the manufacturer is giving a discount on their control systems, but it is still $66,505 for the whole replacement, which is quite a bit of money. We could also decide we're done with the whole thing. We don't want anything to do with NIPA anymore. We could pull out completely and buy everything back from them. Except I'm not particularly interested in that approach, seeing as I don't know that we're in a place to actually maintain the lights ourselves, should they break. So that brings us to what's option 3 in the document, which is one I would recommend, is that we replace nodes as they fail over time. The benefit to this is it spreads the cost out. NIPA will take that replacement labor cost as part of their contract with us for repairs and maintenance over time. So the labor cost is effectively 0. It's incorporated in our current contract for repairs with them. The downside is that we would be paying full freight for the replacement pieces rather than getting a bit of a discount, but it would be staged over time. And the fact that we don't pay for the labor means that in total, we're talking just shy of $30,000 spread over, they suggest, I think 5 to 10 years or more that we'll be replacing this over time. The other downside is that for some period of time, as long as we're between these 2 systems, we'll have 2 different systems. We'll have to know which one's in which and go around. And so there's a bit more of a maintenance burden on Dusty when he's trying to manage the lighting system, but it's something we do fairly rarely. It's usually in response to either an outage of some sort or a customer or a resident concern about brightness or something like that. So it's not a very often that we're in the system. And that seems like a rather reasonable trade-off for us. So my recommendation is to go with option 3, where we just replace this slowly over time as things break. But it was a rather annoying email to receive this soon into this new streetlight program.
For the record, since these have been in place, I've had 2 requests for dimming streetlights. And 2 times where I'm gonna call the city, we have lights that are out that they need to come and fix. 4 times in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of strength right now.
That'll accelerate towards the end of the lifespan of those
Mhm.
components, but. Yeah, I think that's. Annoying. We're not. Jessica found a bunch of money laying around somewhere. $67,000.
Right.
Full replacement.
No, not at all.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yes, I'm with you.
Well, then I'll respond to NIPA and say we'd like to go with option 3 and take it from there.
And then maybe as part of that, if you want to reference streetlights in Village Grove.
Yeah, yeah.
See how we get those added to the system if possible.
There's no action on my part. It's fine.
I don't think so. I can take it.
Okay, any other items of new business?
No.
Seeing no members of the public present, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss EMS personnel issues.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Thanks, guys, for everything you do.
Can you guys hang on a sec? All in favor of going into executive session to discuss EMS personnel matter, please say aye.
All right.
Bye.